Okay, so Rabbi Bauman asked me to open up the session, so I would like to open up the session by handing the floor with Rabbi Bauman, the senior Manal and Mechanech in our yeshiva. So as he did last time, he sort of acted as one of the panelists and moderator between the fighting of the other panelists.
Okay, thank you.
Which could happen.
Good morning. I want to thank Mrs. Koppel and your committee for putting this together. It's a wonderful opportunity, and it gets us to think as well. Okay, so I guess we should start. First question. My children all have different temperaments and needs. I try my best to give each one what they need based on their age, maturity, temperament, etc. However, all too often I hear something like, it's not fair, how come she gets, and all I get is, like for instance, going to sleep early, or she has sleepovers, I don't. How do you explain to children the concept that fair isn't always equal? So I would just say that the questioner has already answered most of the question. Fair not being equal is certainly a very important message that children need to hear. I guess the best, or one of the ways to look at it is, or maybe you should take your child over to a medicine cabinet and point to all the medicines that are in the medicine cabinet, and ask them if they want to take their sister's allergy medicine, or if they want to take their mother's whatever medicine. But they think they can understand the concept that when it comes to something like medicine, everybody has to have the appropriate prescription for their needs in their particular situation. And similarly, when it comes to other activities that parents need to weigh in on and to decide, certainly for younger children, so they need to hear that this is what you need. And obviously it has to be done with a certain amount of self-confidence on the part of the parent, which means you have to give it forethought, as you have to do everything that you do as a parent, not just shoot from the hip. But if you have a clear plan in mind of what you're going to allow your children to do and at what age and what stage, so then the ability to explain it to the child is the easy part. But I think by showing that the idea that there are things that every individual needs for themselves, and it's not a question of fairness, even within a child's mind they understand that it's not a question of fairness. Certain things are just, that's the way they are. So with that in mind, with that approach, I think you'll be able to handle these issues as best as possible.
I'll let you go first. For your eyewitness, he's letting me go first. This is an excellent question. Kids that are looking to see what they don't have and want to see what the other, let's say one in the family does have, don't think we don't have these issues in school as well. So I want to say two things. First of all, what Rabbi Bauman said was spot on. But that's a situation where you're assuming that the child is asking an intellectual question and you're going to respond with an intellectual answer. I just can't see this scenario playing out. You take the child that's upset that he or she has to go to sleep early. Or whatever, the child, or Yankee got a bigger piece of cake than me, and you're going to take him into the medicine cabinet, show him all the different medicines, and then he or she will say, "Oh, I get it." You suddenly have a moment of epiphany and understand how education works. It's like very hard. There's an emotional pain that children feel at times, and if you want to respond to that emotional pain with an intellectual answer, very often will not work. Even though that's the voice that you're using, it often won't work. You have to respond to an emotional, they feel like not as loved right now. And some kids put their physical needs, they attach that to their emotional needs. So if you respond intellectually, it just may not hit the point. So that's why even though what Rabbi Bauman said is like spot on, if you find that that's not working, they may require a lot more love and attention. I know that's not answering the question now, but you have to find time to provide a lot of love and attention for that child. I just want to say, look, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, but we had kids, and until all my kids were first 13 years, until our last one was born, we had the most amazing sibling rivalry of any family. You could not believe how much they were fighting. And this question would be like a joke. It happened like all the time. And we did our best, my wife and I. And then our youngest was born with a handicap, special needs. She was born, she needed surgeries right away. And I want to tell you something. Within a couple of months, all that sibling rivalry disappeared. Just went away. Like I say, that was the greatest bracha we could have gotten. And what did we do? Like, we didn't do anything except for deal with her special needs. And somehow our kids saw the love that we had, and that kind of like answered the question for them. And so if you see this happening, you have to give them an intellectual answer, but just realize that what they're really saying is that I feel not as loved as my brother or sister, and you have to try and fill the gap if you can. No need to go further from that. Thank you. Okay, number 2. How do we balance meeting a child's need for special services and tutoring with maintaining his self-esteem? If we find we need to choose between fueling his self-worth or his academic success, which is more important during the elementary school years? There's another fantastic question. You have a child who needs tutoring, and we're afraid that providing the tutoring is going to impact his or her self-esteem. Which is more important? Firstly, obviously in the question specifically asked during the elementary school years, and I would think that in the elementary school years the window to be able to help children isn't always there. So, self-esteem, sometimes they don't want to get the extra help, but self-esteem could be impacted when the child just cannot perform together or on the same way that their friends can. So getting them the extra help often is the root of bolstering self-esteem, even though in the short term it would seem the opposite. And I believe that's why we try with children to find the special talent that they have, and to, if he's good at baseball or music or dance, whatever we could find. We had a educational consultant come in, and we looked at the whole school, and even our Beis Medrash division, and they're 18, 19, and 20, and the consultant told us that by meeting with them, he was able to tell that the boys have a great desire to speak. Many of them have personalities and they want to speak, but there is no opportunity. They're learning with a chavrusa, and when they have a chance to speak. So if you can create opportunities for them to speak. So we scheduled the Malava Malka, and we told them that this Malava Malka, we think that everyone should speak. Say Dvar Torah, say something inspirational. And we had about 40 guys. 30 of them spoke. They all got up to speak. We told them, you can prepare, not prepare, and we're coming. But what did we do? It cost us like 4 pies of pizza. It was the cheapest medicine. They just didn't realize to find things that our children want, and that really addresses, there's nothing like a child that has a special need. Wow, he's a pianist, he's going to play a concert, a recital, and it makes them feel very, very special. I remember hearing the video, I think you showed it to me, from Richard Lavoie, and he said, you know, if all your kid knows how to do is bang hammers, then you put nails on the side of your house and you give your kid a hammer and let him bang those nails in, you know, the more nails you could find, the better. Just keep banging those nails in. Tell him or her out how well they do it. And, you know, it's a real issue. In the older years, you hear stories. I just heard on the radio that one of the biggest problems with adults who are on any kind of a mental health medication is that they don't take their medication. So they don't want to feel, it's also a self-esteem issue. So I think we have to try and tackle some of the issues when people are young, is that the window closes. The more that we could, you know, able to create this idea of, you know, they have their own inner talent, different than everyone else, and where they shine, I think that will impact whatever services they have to get, because they see that they're special in other ways. And then these services, I think, really are addressing the long-term self-esteem, which is so much more crucial.
Okay, I agree with everything Rabbi Palgan said. I think that one thing to consider is the fact that we are, as the years go on, we're much more, we meaning general educational society, we're much more sophisticated and aware of differences in children's learning needs and their intellectual strengths, and it's become much less of a stigma to get special help. I think it's a greater awareness of everyone's individuality, and for the great majority of children who are, I would say, could fit into a mainstream school, no matter what kind of school that is, they're very much aware of their academic struggles, and that's their daily existence. If we keep a child, you know, in a regular classroom, don't give them any special support, and they're struggling, so their daily experience is one of running to catch up, failure, and not being as good, quote unquote, as the other kids in the class. So that's what's impacting them on a daily basis. So even though maybe in a global sense they're, you know, we're sort of making believe that they're, you know, up to par with everybody else, they're feeling that impact on a daily basis. To the extent that we can destigmatize kind of help that individuals need and everybody would benefit from, so then we're able to both deal with their special needs and not only maintain but enhance their self-esteem, because the circles that they're operating in is one which, fortunately, unfortunately, rightly or wrongly, we take children, little human beings, and we put them in an academic setting throughout their formative years, even though the majority of adults don't live their lives in an educational setting or academic setting, because that's not necessarily speaking to their strengths. And when you're an adult, you go find your path. But we take the children, we stuff them into schools. It's a whole other debate, which we're not going to solve that problem today. But given that reality, we have to realize that their world is primarily an academic world, and we have to give them the tools to be able to succeed in that. That's the first line of defense. If that's really beyond them, or they're never going to really feel good about their academic accomplishments, so then we certainly have to move into the area of which we should do anyway, really focus on their other areas of strength, whatever hobbies they might have, skills, talents, music, art, any area that they might be able to have. But I would say the first step would be to try to figure out a way that they can be successful in an academic setting. And this is bigger than all of us, so I'm not saying that that's how if I was designing the world, that I would design it that way. But this is the reality that we face. Our children are in schools, for better or for worse, so that forms, and that is the universe that they operate in. We have to try to make that as successful an experience as possible.
I totally agree with everything Rabbi Mordechai and Rabbi Bauman said, except for one item. The example that Richard Lloyd gave was Phillips head screwdrivers. He didn't say anything about hammers and nails and the side of it. I did disagree with. You have to realize that, yes, sometimes academic success, like 100% right, does lead to self-esteem. But what do you do, like Rabbi Bauman said, when they don't feel the success? That's like a real problem. And I know the challenges that some kids have. We once had a kid in the middle school, the parents absolutely refused to have their child tutored or taken out of class for any reason whatsoever. It was such a serious problem that the parents felt the child had. Now, we didn't agree, but we had to honor that. You should know we're so careful in the middle school. We're so careful. They're so worried about what their friends say about them. So like we're really careful. Like right now we have don't tell anyone, but the kids that need help in math, what we did was we have the same teacher that teaches honors math also teaches a small group of 6 or 7 kids. And the first day when we give out their schedules, we just say, Mrs. Rizel, this, during the first period, Mrs. Rizel, second period, and they don't know the difference. Early in the year, a boy came to me and said, "Why is mine such a small class?" I said, "Because everyone in the school is asking for that small class. If you don't want to be there, I got 15 people waiting to take your place. You want to switch now? They'll be so happy." He said, No, I'll keep my spot. So we just dodged a bullet. But you have to be really, really careful. And the other thing that we do, I don't know, I would defer to Rabbi Bauman. I don't know if you can do this in elementary school or something like young ages. But certainly in the middle school, we try hard to do this. I don't want to say successfully, but we're working very hard at it. Is to get the boys involved in their own education, to take responsibility for their own education, so that sometimes kids they have no worries. They let their I won't say dads. That's not reality. Most dads. I let moms worry about me. Their parents worry about them, and they don't have any worries. So we try and get the boys involved in the issues that they have. So that takes some time. And so, for example, we have the boys fill out categories, like once a month, they fill out categories of 14 areas that we assess them on, skills and behaviors that support learning. And when they see that the boys fill them out, and then all the teachers fill them out, so they get to see, this is not the report card, this is just a random day, and they get to see what he filled out, what he himself filled out, and what that teacher filled out. And then you compare the two, saying, how come I'm giving myself a high grade, my teacher's giving me a low grade, or vice versa. And when those discussions emerge, sometimes they realize, okay, I may need help in this area, and that's when they're willing to talk to a guidance counselor. That's when they're willing, I need a little help, I want to improve in reading, and at that time, you get them to buy into whatever it is you want to do. So it takes a lot of discussion, but everything Rabbi Mordechai said regarding compensating for that and finding talents in other areas, I agree with 100%.
We'll start the next one.
Okay. How do I balance my child's academic growth and abilities versus his or her social surroundings? For example, if I can choose between my child being in a class that is better for his or her learning academic growth, both in Kodesh and secular, but the students in the class may not be the best influence socially or hashkafically. or put my child in a class with students that are a more positive influence, but the academics are not right for him or her, which takes precedence? I was hoping when I came today there'd be questions like, do you think bedtime is a good thing? Something like that. That's a loaded question. Again, I want to say that self-confidence comes from success in the classroom. So I think that you have to really look at this really hard. If you see a child being successful in a certain class, I think that's the default position. Then you start weighing in, okay, but the kids may not be as strong hashkafically. I think that's where the default should be. Where is he or she going to be most successful? I'm going to hedge my bet here. If I would say if it's academics are a big difference, it's going to be like a major difference, academically successful in one class. I think you stick with that and deal with the other issue. If it's a very subtle difference, so that's when the question comes into play. Also, like you don't always know. It's like your assessment that it won't be good for him or her. It's not always necessarily true. Some kids are, just followers. They will follow, a bad crowd. I remember once when I was teaching in high school, there's a boy that came in the 9th grade in the middle of the year, and he told me that his father told him when he dropped him off that his name was Ellie. Ellie, there are good boys and bad boys. Make sure you hang out with the good boys. And he said, I told my dad, Dad, I am the bad boys. I'm the one people are trying to stay away from. That's why we're switching schools. You don't always know. And so that's why I would make sure to talk it out with the principals. I know that years ago when I had a 12 or 13-year-old, and he wanted to hang out with a certain friend, and my wife and I did not want him to hang out with that friend. So the problem was that if we said no, then it was like he'd say we don't trust him. It's like, what do you do? It was really, really hard. So we tried to do it in a subtle way. And when he got older, he told us, why'd you do that? He was such a good kid. Anyway, so you have to be really, really careful. I think when it comes to classes, you just talk it out with the principals. I work for Rabbi Bauman. I know how much time goes into placements of classes. It's not all academic. Those are some of the questions that principals weigh. How does each child function in that class? And we obsess over those decisions over and over and over again. But to share the thought, don't assume that you necessarily know, because you could be hurting your child. So these are great questions. And again, just to make it clear, I think if it's very obvious where the academic success will be, my vote is to go with that.
Okay, this is a fantastic question. It's a very hot topic in the world. I don't know if in this room it's a hot topic. It's a question, but it's a really, really hot topic in the yeshiva world. Regretfully, there are people who make decisions on these questions, and you want it to be for the right reason. You want to at least get halavai. I would say, you're going to get either better academic growth or you can get better influence. There's no matter what you go, the question presumes you're going to get one of them, which is best. Regretfully, the parents make decisions and they get neither, because it's not really academic growth that they want. There's often, I apologize for saying it because you would think parent wouldn't do this, but there's a lot of covered, attached, embedded in between the lines, not of the questioner, but in these types of scenarios, there's a lot of, prejudices in where the parents are getting more covered in which class or yeshiva the child is in. At the Aguda convention this year, there was a question presented to Rav Elia Brudny, Rashiva Mir, and the question was, my son is in a yeshiva that has, a high school that has no secular studies. Outside Miami, those things exist, you know, Eretz Yisrael, Lakewood, you know, and there's no secular studies, and he's going into 11th grade, and my husband and I feel that, you know, he has to get through life, he should need some secular studies training. So should we keep him in the yeshiva, he's doing very well, or should we switch him to yeshiva that has secular studies? That was the question. Okay. But the answer was so powerful. Rav Elia Brudny said, I have no sympathy for the questioner, this question, because what happened to this secular studies when they were choosing a high school? What were they thinking then? You're not obligated to send your child to a school that has no secular studies. So they wanted to send their child to a place that gave them, his opinion, more honor and covet. They sent them to this real, you know, special yeshiva, and now they're worrying about secular studies. You know, they felt that he felt that the original decision was not based on the best interests of the child. And I think that's the first thing. If it was really clear that you can get one of them, I would say, okay, you're going to get one of them. Both of them are really good. You're going to get positive influence, and you get great academic growth. At least you're getting one. But make sure you're getting one of them before you have to get involved with the decision. Yes, there are times where it's not easy to choose. And I agree that if it's really the delta is so great between where the child is holding and where the class is, you may have to put them there. I remember when I was going into 9th grade, I got put into the. I'm saying this just for the effect, even though it's being streamed live. I was put into the stupid math class. Everybody knows what that class is. There were the smart kids and there were stupid kids for math, and I knew why I was put in that class, but the teacher, when he came in on the first day, he came in and said, you know, I saw one class took the state regent, 9th grade, and one class took the citywide exam. Anyone who knows New York can understand the difference between state peer competitors and New York City, inner city competitors. So he said, you know, I saw the roster and I was looking at all of your scores on standardized tests, and you guys, and look at your scores. There's no reason why you guys couldn't ace the state regions. I don't see any reason. I don't understand how they divided the class. So are you guys in? You want? I can guarantee it. If you put in the work, you'll ace the state regions. So we didn't know from anything. It's just it was algebra, because it's not the most complex math, and we believed it. We believed that, you know, he looked at our scores, and we could do it. So we bought in. I got 100 on my 9th grade algebra region, and that was the end of my phobia on math, because this teacher, and you know, they have this story. It's a little bit, you know, it's a popular story, maybe even trite. This teacher goes ahead at the end of the year. They give this teacher an award for, in the history of the school, she raised the standard of the children sort of unbelievably. They never had such a thing. And when they interviewed her afterwards, they said, I don't understand why I'm getting this award. You know, I had gifted students. They said, what do you mean gifted students? You're not gifted students. These kids had not performed for all the years of school. He says, what are you talking about? And said, you gave out the list. I saw all their IQs. And look at them. 115, 122, 130, these are like off the charts. These are highest IQs. Those aren't IQs, those are their locker numbers. So the teacher thought these kids were brilliant, so they taught to how brilliant they were. And very often,
there is not stupid.
right.
So there is some stupid and some smart.
Well, I thought I was, yeah.
So there is not stupid.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's often, you know, the case. If a child can be given the belief that they can succeed. So very often they can succeed in that class ahead, unless it's really just, it just can't. And sometimes the child is going in there for the wrong reason. That's a real, a real challenge on your hand. And the other comment I was going to make, and the positive influences, I don't know, it could be there's a better question to say this on, but I'm just going to mention it here, is that it's very, very healthy sometimes to make your own house the preferred place for your child to want to be. And I know it comes up later with questions, and maybe we'll get to a little bit later, but if a person is put to the situation where there are some negative influences, there are ways to combat that, but I think maybe we'll wait to a different question to be more accurate.
Okay, I think maybe I won't wait till the next question, because I think it is appropriate here. Rabbi Palman read a lot more into this question than seems to be on the surface. I would go out on a different limb to try to address this issue. The question, just to remind you what the question was the balance between the child's academic growth versus the peer influence. I think that possibly underlying this question is a little bit of a sense of use the word impotence, that the parent is powerless to have much of an influence over over what goes on in the child's life outside of the home. I think there's a need for greater proactivity. Although you certainly have to, as the parent, you have to be aware of the choices that are within the school or within the community, what is the best for your child, and you try to lobby for them and put them into a place that you think is the best for them. But at the end of the day, what's going to impact the child the most is the inner strength that they get from the family. And that's how much the parents build up their self-confidence by showing unconditional love, showing the child that they believe in them, and giving them the support and the confidence to handle different situations, being open to whatever the children's issues are, so that when the child is struggling, either in the academic realm or in the social realm, that they will share with their parents what's going on, and that you can be therefore the resource that the child turns to. And I reiterate this on any occasion I have. Many of the parents, many of us, in this day and age, maybe we're not the same people who we were when we were growing up, religiously or socially, and we feel inadequate that we can, certainly if we put our children in yeshiva, we ourselves didn't go to yeshiva, we feel like we don't have much to add to their well-being. After all, the little 7-year-old can read Hebrew much better than I can, for example. So what can I add to their life anymore? So that's a tremendous mistake. The parents are shortchanging themselves and their children because they have a tremendous amount, they have everything to add to their children's life. So rather than looking at the circumstances as something out of my control, and maybe I can manipulate them remotely, but that's the be-all and end-all of my child's success. If they get to the wrong class, forget it, life is over at the age of 8.5. We should realize that as parents, we have the tremendous ability to have the most important impact on our children, and to help them to cope with the situations that come up along the way. But if the children come from a family where there's happiness at home, and there's confidence and love expressed between the members of the family, and that's the focus, rather than what's wrong with things outside the family. There might be many things wrong outside, and maybe many things wrong within the school and the classroom. But the focus should be on how strong that bond is between the parent and the child, and how much love and confidence the parent has for the child. So that, I think, should be the primary focus. After you try to take care of the things that are out of your control, focus on the things that are within your control. Okay, next question. Okay, number 4. My child does not seem to have so many friends in school, yet he or she doesn't seem to mind. he or she appears somewhat happy being more to himself, herself. Is that okay? Should I be trying to push more friendships because they really are lacking an important need? Or is that just their makeup? And pushing friendships may even be detrimental. Please advise. Well, this is where the parent's role as the one who knows the child the best comes to the fore. The question is very insightful. The answer really, it really depends, because there are some children who will do much better. They're very happy being by themselves. They're not as social as others. You have to see, what do they do on a long Sunday afternoon? If they're at home and they're kvetching and they have nothing to do and they're bored and they're bored and they're bored, so then it's an indicator that they're not so okay without friends or just being by themselves. On the other hand, if they're able to entertain themselves, and it's not just by sitting in front of a screen, but doing something, something worthwhile, reading or a hobby or building something, and they seem to be perfectly happy, so then I would say let it be.
I totally agree. There has to be the right balance. So I don't think you keep the child in seclusion. There should be opportunities to socialize with others. If it's a young child, still called play dates. I don't think they call it that in middle school, but there should be those opportunities. For some, they may need them several times a week, and for others, like once a week would be more than enough. So I think as long as there's a balance, like you're on the charts, I think it's okay if a child seems well-adjusted, comfortable being by himself or herself to a certain degree. Some kids feel like uncomfortable when there are others around them. So, but if they're, I have one of my kids has a very small circle of friends, very small. The child is very happy with that. Doesn't need more. Others had, best friends with every single person in the class. So, so it just depends on the child. So I think that I agree in this case. You just use your good common sense. The child seems well adjusted. I think you don't have to push it much more than. But I wouldn't just leave it totally alone and just say, okay, you're not asking for friends. That's fine with me. I think that you have some opportunity and see how that works.
Okay. I don't have that much to add, but I think there are different personalities in children. One of the parents sitting in this room, I won't mention the name, but they told me that when their child was in early childhood, they were told that their child never says a word, but all the kids want to sit next to them all the time. And so the kid's not talking, and everybody wants to be around him. So sometimes we may think that they have no friends. But I would call school, find out how the child is faring at school. Is he interacting with the other children during recess, during class? And if that's going well, I wouldn't be so concerned. I know we're worried, as it does say in Pirkei Avos, "Seilach harav, k'nei lecha chaver." Person should acquire themselves a friend, a good friend. But the younger years, it's very hard. But I think it is, trying to facilitate as much as possible. Sometimes even during the Yom Tovim, the holidays, just interacting with relatives, cousins. That could also be a meaningful, friendship, and just to help, jumpstart certain friendships, just to keep the child engaged. As Rabbi Bauman mentioned, healthy activities. If it means getting involved in some kind of, team sports, or a boy or dance, just getting them involved with just social interaction might also be, especially for a younger child, may be sufficient. And sometimes the children they're afraid of rejection. There's a certain shyness. They're uncomfortable with. Probably tell the difference in parents can see the difference even in 6 months. 6 months, how social. Every child is different. Some kids, they don't like hugging their parents even. They just give you a little kiss and they're done. And some kids they hold on for dear life. There's such a difference, and that also manifests itself in how they interact with others. So, if there's a concern, yes, sometimes there may be a little coaching. There may be a tremendous fear of rejection. They're walking around with that fear all day. If that's the problem, that probably has to be addressed somehow. But if it's not the problem, it could be not necessary to push. Next. Okay, number 5. I try to control what my children are exposed to. However, I feel a pressure to give in to certain things, technology, at what age to give them a phone, based on what other parents that grade have allowed. How do we help counteract these influences? It's a fantastic question, probably the most prevalent question on everyone's minds nowadays, because the society has plummeted. So we who are investing so much in the education of our children, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars a year on, if not more, on the education of our children, when we have schools that are available free of charge. So I was speaking to someone. They said that they have an easy way to get the municipalities to pay for private education. We should get all the parents to one day go in and register their kids in the public schools, and they're going to look at the list. All of a sudden, they have to now service another, whether a few thousand kids. There's no way they'll be able to provide services for those kids. They're going to have to build buy new campuses and build buildings. They can't afford that. So they say, you know what? And the cost of education is real, teachers and other services. So they're going to just say, we'll just give you money per kid, you do it, which is what we're asking for. Why doesn't that happen? I asked somebody, so why don't we do that? They said they won't do it because they've spoken to many people, maybe none of us here, but they've spoken to many people, and no parent is ready to put their kid for one day, because they may actually, you may be from the first, they'll have room for the first 100 or 200. But I'm not really ready to put my kid there for one day. So no parent, can you believe this? No parent's going to have their kid go in there, because the influences are so plummeted, so low. So we're in a real situation. So we have to, almost provide things that society is just putting out there and everything, and they're trying to get our kids on even media and the craziest conspiracy theories also going on. What they're trying to put in, Hollywood's trying to put in. This Hollywood, California Hollywood, is trying to put in to attract our kids. So it really is a very, very important question. And the first thing I want to say is what I had alluded to earlier, mentioned here. I think we have to make, Vasuli Mikdash Shachanti B'Sochem. I think everyone has the obligation to make their homes a mikdash. It's not enough to send the child to yeshiva and then he's gonna get all the kodesh there. It's not reality. First of all, there are lots of, you don't know what the influences are. There's only so much the yeshiva could do. The teacher will watch it, but where the kids are running around, the kids could say anything, and we do our best to really be the warden of which kids are coming, what the influences are. But the real influence has to come from home. So we really have to spend a lot of time figuring out what the child is learning from home. We don't even realize what they pick up from home. So I think that's really important. I think it's important for a kid to feel like his home has everything. When my son, I had 2 daughters and then had a boy. When my son became 8, I got the best possible basketball hoop. And I installed it, in my, 2x4 car area. So this is like the best hoop. It was like state of the art. You couldn't get better than this. That was the hoop. You can't even go to the parks and get a basketball hoop like that. And he was so excited. He got his friends to come. And then I got a pool table. Someone was giving away a pool table. Still taking up. My wife one day she came in. There was this pool table in our living room. She was so upset at me. And I said, yeah, wait, he was so excited about this pool table. And then, a few months, he wanted to make a ping pong table, so he was sawing wood and putting it on top of the pool table. And then we started, we bought these subscriptions to every possible periodical that I thought he would read. Okay? Yated, Amodia, Mishpacha, Ami, I got everything, Zman. Anything that was out there that I thought was appropriate, I got. I don't have time to not read one article in any of these. I knew I wouldn't have time to read any of this. I get them, and I don't know what he'll read, what he won't read. But anything that was okay to read, I just overwhelmed the environment with different types of these types of things. Board games, things for Shabbos. I did many things. I told him on Shabbos, we don't play pool on Shabbos. I didn't do it as a halacha. I think for Katanim they do it. Some people say it's okay, but I just wanted to make sure, that we did that. I don't know. I think we have the technology has to be really monitored. You have to speak to people who know about what's okay, what's not okay about technology, and then follow through. I think that's an area to be strong on. And I once want to say over, if anybody wants to listen to that, a Real Convention channel, questions and answers to Revelia Brudny, they asked a similar type question to Revelia Brudny and Rabbi Yosef Elephant from the Mir. And the question was, we keep Chalav Yisrael. That was the question. My kid doesn't want to keep Chalav Yisrael. And, how should we handle it? Is this something to make a battle ground over? And I am not commenting on the Chalav Yisrael issue at all, but the answer can be applied to anything. And I was not expecting the answer that he gave, but it's such a great answer to keep in mind. He says, why would you give up on Chalav Yisrael? Listen to how he said it. You have to say it with pride. In our family, this is the identity of our family. You're going to give up the identity of our family. You have to speak with pride about the things that we believe in. And, say it over that we're so excited that we do this. But it says that when Moshe Rabbeinu heard the two Yidden in Mitzrayim speaking the Lashon Hara, so he said that, I forget, Achei Noda Hadavar, Moshe Rabbeinu says. Now I understand. And the Mefarshim say, Rashi, now he understands why the whole Shibud Mitzrayim took place, and all the slavery in Mitzrayim for 210 years we were enslaved, because the Jewish people was speaking Lashon Hara. He said two Jews speaking Lashon Hara. So I heard the question asked. So Moshe Rabbeinu sees now they're speaking Lashon Hara. How does it explain the last 209 and a half years? And I heard one amazing answer, is that, if they're speaking Lashon Hara today, it means that 250 years ago, the Alta Babis and Zaydis, maybe they didn't speak Lashon Hara, but they didn't speak to their families with such a strength to ensure that their children, or their grandchildren, or their great-grandchildren are not going to do it. So the things that we take on, we have to say it with such enthusiasm, with such hislavus, with such pride, that why would they want to give up their identity? It's part of their identity. We should say with pride. And when we do that with pride, technology is the best area to try and stay strong in as long as we can. There are some times where you have to make an adjustment. There are. You have to speak to people who are savvy. But I'm just trying to give that the flavor is that we have to, whatever we're doing, we have to do it with tremendous pride. Get the children in on it. Wow, we're so excited about this. Have a family meeting you realize what we're doing? We're going against the tide. We're going to write letters into the editor. We're going to send a letter into Zman or Ami about our family that we went technology free in our house, or things like that. Make them excited about it. They shouldn't just hear the because it's so negative. We have to do because of tremendous pride. You know, I heard this one mashal, with this I'll end. There was someone walking down the street, and there were two toddlers on either side of the street. One toddler was by the gate trying to get out, crying, and one toddler was by the gate trying to get out, laughing. One parent told their toddler that the gate is locked so that no one can come and hurt them. And one parent told the toddler that the gate is locked so they can't run out and hurt themselves. Which child is attached to the parent who told the kid that they can't get out so they can't hurt themselves? And which toddler was told that the gate is locked so no one can come and hurt them?
The crying one.
Right. We all know it. The toddler that was told that the gate is locked so no one can come and hurt them is laughing. Mommy protected me so no one can come hurt me. And the parent who told the toddler that the gate is locked so they can't go out and hurt themselves there. And often what we do is we know what's right. Obviously that's why the gate is locked so the kid can't go out. But what do we tell the children? I think the communication to the child, they hear things differently than when we mean it. We mean it for their best interest, but they have to hear it. In my house, I wasn't smart enough to do this. Someone gave me this advice. We had internet in our house, and we told our teenager to please go and try and break all the codes and filters because we want it to be safe for you, and the only way we can know if it's safe is if it is safe. So you let us know. Go hack away. Let us know if you find anything. So let me know. Now you won't believe it. Over the years, like it came a couple of times. You may want to check on this now. This thing went down. You can get by Covenant Eyes this way. You can web power, and they come over to me and tell me because it was presented as okay with wisdom. I didn't think of it myself. With wisdom that it's so no one can come and hurt you. You know, so you let me know if it's going to help you and hack away, please. It was my ultimate honor if you would find a way where there's a hole, and then I'll tell you.
Okay, I think from the time that Rabbi Palgan spent on this question, it's obviously very, very important. I just wanted to add, just broaden the idea about the family, applies in this case and applies really in general. We have to convey the idea that our family is special. Every parent is in a position of making demands on their children that the children will say, well, it's not fair because so-and-so does this, so-and-so does that. And you have to develop the ability to say, well, our family is special, this is how we do it in our family. And by just conveying that, the same pride that Rabbi Palgan was talking about, I think that message will come across. I just want to answer this question very practically. I'm trying any opportunity that I have. There's actually a very concrete and a specific method at this point to work on how parents can counteract the peer pressure about technology, certainly at the younger ages before it becomes too late. Something that we're talking about, trying to figure out how to promote amongst the parent body. We're speaking with you and speaking to whoever's listening remotely. Maybe we can create a buzz. There's a group called MUST, M-U-S-T, stands for Mothers United to Stall Technology, and their basic idea is that whatever technology is in use within the child's class, peer group today, if they're 4-year-olds and they have nothing, that's stalled their technology use at that point. they're already older and they have phones but not smartphones, so let's stop it there. Wherever the group happens to be, try to stall it. How does it work? They have a website, a couple of mothers within each class should take it upon themselves to be ambassadors, take a poll of the other mothers in the group. Where are your children up to? What technology actually exists right now in use among the other children in the class? And then once you determine what that is, then there's a contract that everyone agrees that we're not going to get them any additional technology. We're going to tell grandma from San Francisco not to send them an iPad for their next birthday, or not to send who knows what for Hanukkah. We're going to be vigilant. We're going to hold it here, because the thinking behind this is that everyone, certainly yeshiva mothers, are all convinced that these things are bad for our kids. It's not good educationally, developmentally, religiously. Any reason you want to give, these things are not good. But what can I do? Everybody else has it. I can't, I'm defenseless. I'm just one person. So in this way, it's an organized way, and it's been successful in some places. It can't come from the yeshiva. It has to be a grassroots movement. But I would urge you to go onto their website, must.org, I think, and you'll find out more about it. You had a question, yes?
You respond.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
Okay, so, our cousin mentioned that, like, basically in our family it's no technology. But yes, the mother and father has phones, so it's not a role model to say it's not technology. And the second issue that I want to, it's in my family, I always push back, no technology, no phones, no iPads at all. And since they're 4 or 5 years old, we decided at the house. But we said, at the bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah, we're gonna have fun. But the bat mitzvah is coming in 6 months now, so I really don't want, I still don't think it's like, they're still young for a phone.
Second bus mitzvah, 20.
So what we should say, like, I don't want to be, she was looking forward for it. All those years, it was, okay, 3 more years, 2 more years. Now it's 6 months and she's counting down. I wanted to find a nice and appropriate way to tell her, me and Daddy thought about this and that, but how we can say that? Like, any idea for me?
Before you answer, I just want to say I would sooner give it to them until their bas mitzvah and take it away from bas mitzvah on.
It's a very good issue. One, now you're going back on your word, so you want to, you don't want to lose their trust. But one avenue you may want to take is that the rules have changed since you told them that. What's available is what got much worse. So, the way my father bought an iPad and got frustrated after like a week. He still couldn't figure out how to turn it on. So he gave it to my son, and he offered it to him. I spoke to Avram Eliezer Friedman, our IT director, and he told me there is no way to really protect an iPad. And I told my father that, thank you so much for the iPad. I spoke to the IT director at school. They said that for teenagers, there's no way to protect it. Adults, it's okay. But so my father said, okay, so whatever the iPad costs, go buy something that you think will be good for him. That's when I got the best book. So maybe what you could do,
I asked her already.
there's nothing, you can't replace life itself. It's life itself. But
They want.
I don't know. I mean, there are wiser people than I how to handle it. But I think this calls for a family meeting and to take the time brother said, with tremendous love, and to say that, you know, that this is what everyone said. There was a whole seminar, you know, that we had, and everyone came, and they said that things changed. So I apologize. I can never do anything to hurt you. I would never do anything to hurt yourself. In some way they can they could buy into it, and give them an opportunity to see something, to go on and research it, find the sites, like research it yourself. You know, I'm 12. Should I get a smartphone and see what comes up? Maybe they can look at some of those things, and they can buy into it and say, listen, we apologize profusely, but Eli Shapiro had he had his daughter speak on that video, and you know, when you hear it from a teenager, why they're happy that they didn't get it, maybe, yeah, thanking the father for doing that. Dr. Shames, who our school's named after, told me once, I don't care what my kid thinks about me when he's 15 years old. I care what he thinks about me when he turns 35. That's what I care. So a little bit, as hard as it is, we'd have to inject some of that. It was very hard. I can't. He was, you know, his kids knew that. So we have to make the decision. Tell your child, you may be upset, but you're gonna thank me. Listen to this one, listen to that one, and to whatever extent you could do it. I'm glad to speak to you at a different time and to come with more strategies. I'm probably not giving enough, and maybe my chaverim have better advice, but I don't think the situation therefore says, therefore you have to do that. Times changed, and you may also want to speak to Mr. Friedman outside, who probably has great ideas on what is out there that your children can understand is so terrible, because he knows.
Can I just add on that? It's such an important piece, and everything that Rabbi Baum, Rabbi Mordechai said about, you know, what the family believes in, it applies here more than ever. But like, what do you do right now? You gave your word to something. I remember when we were looking for a house, and we had to schlep along our 5-year-old when we were looking at houses. We couldn't leave her alone for whatever reason. And so this one kid was with us when we saw 5 or 6 different houses. And one day she said to us, you know, we should get that house. So we said, why? Like, after a while they all looked the same to us. So what is it that you like about that house? And she said, that house has a TV. So here we thought that all our children understood why we didn't have a TV, and she just thought either the house has it or doesn't have it. So you have to like really explain to them. And I also would suggest, first of all, follow Rabbi Mordechai's advice. He sees the problems on the other end. You know, he's the ones that have to deal with those issues. And when you have that meeting, make sure that they see how upset you are. The child should see the pain on your face, tears of you possibly having to go back on something that you said when you didn't understand the ramifications. And I'm sure the love will come out.
I said dinner.
You're protected.
Yes. Just the other part of her question, is it sending a wrong message, the fact that the parents have the phone?
It certainly it opens up the potential to claims of hypocrisy, but you can explain to them that adults need it for business, you need it for shopping, you need it for adult activities. And therefore it's different than for children. However, I will share with you, actually last night we had Rabbi Nehemiah Gottlieb from TAG, as we're looking to bring in the Technology Awareness Group here to help the families in the school deal with filters and other things. So he told over a story about a teenage boy who, I'm not sure exactly what the father, I guess, let him use his phone sparingly, and somehow he let it be known that what he did on the phone he immediately, I think I think the boy used the phone, and father could tell the next day that he went to Netflix or some sites of movies inappropriate, and he was very upset with the boy. Somehow the Rebbe got involved. Father maybe went to the Rebbe to talk to the boy. So when the Rebbe spoke to the boy said, what does he want from me? He said, the first thing I do when I go on his phone is I look at his history. And let me tell you, there's a lot worse in his history than what I did. So anyway, so sharing, the adults sharing the phone, you got to be careful, because the kids they're a lot smarter than we are, and they're a lot smarter than we think they are, even though we know that they're smarter. They're smarter than that. So, but I will just tell you that practically there actually exists smartphones that are kosher. I think it just came out a few months ago. I can try to find the information. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I have that phone.
Yeah.
It's a browser-free technology, abgehitten, which means, I have no idea what that means. Actually, it means I think it's cleaned or whatever. So there's
Different
no
operating system.
There's no browser on it. It's not just a filter. It doesn't have the ability to browse. So,
Yeah, but the kids want able to browse.
You'll be able to give them a smartphone, just not do
So where we
some
should
of the
buy
things
it?
they want to do.
I
Yeah,
told
I-
you
I-
you are
What
to do that. Smartphone.
I think we'll be here all day, but I see that Eva Chashuv Magid Shir is here to address it. So thank you everyone for the attention. I think we can go for days and days, but thank you for bringing these issues up. And I hope it's a very inspiring morning and afternoon.
thank you very much. Where did they get this phone from? Mr. Friedman. They want to know where they can get the phone.
KosherOS.com.
Kosher?
TheKosherOS.com.
What?
Kosher OS.
TheKosherOS.com.
Not kosher?
TheKosherOS.com.
The Kosher OS.